So many orphan children, so many widowed wives, so many warrior families have paid the high price. We're here today to stand and say, you're not alone. We'll help you to move on. We're your broken heart soldiers, and we don't question why. We do our duty, through stars and stripes. Our dedication is true to the red, white, and blue. Let's honor all the families of those that won't come home, the wise mothers and children. Pray, Father, keep them strong. We're here today to stand and say, you're not alone. We'll help you to move on. We're your broken heart soldiers, and we don't question why. We do our duty, through stars and stripes. Our dedication is true to the red, white, and blue. We're your broken heart soldiers, and we don't question why. We do our duty, through stars and stripes. Our dedication is true to the red, white, and blue. To the red, white, and blue. To the red, white, and blue. To the red, white, and
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to All Fired Up Military Monday. I'm your host, Betty Kilbride. Today, as you know, is Memorial Day. What should happen every Memorial Day, the first 12 hours, the flag should be at half-staff from dawn until noon, in remembrance of each and every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardman, Merchant Marine who gave their lives for freedom. They should be remembered. They should be revered for their sacrifice. Because of their sacrifice, we as Americans continue to be free. Their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Their sacrifice was for the Constitution of the United States, Declaration of Independence, and everything that we hold dear as Americans: freedom, liberty, prosperity. As of noon today, the flag should have been raised up to full mast in order to salute all those living who continue with the legacy that those who gave the ultimate sacrifice left them. You know, everybody and their cousin believes that today, Memorial Day, you know, it's just a day off from work, an opportunity to have a cookout, invite friends and family over, sit down, suck on some beers, hang out in the backyard, swat off mosquitoes, eat the hot dogs, the hamburgers, the steaks, the salads, whatever else. But, you know, to those of us within the military family and the community of our military, it means so much more. It is a day we as Americans remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for freedom. Across America, veterans of all shapes, sizes, ages, and their families, their legacies gather at cemeteries to honor their brothers and sisters who died on the battlefield throughout history. Families who have lost a loved one gather with the hugs, kisses, and tears for their loss. Many veterans across the nation are also in a very somber mood today because they're remembering their battle buddies, their laughter, their crazy sense of humor. And unfortunately, the day they died on the battlefield in a far-off distant land called Europe, the islands of the Pacific, Korea, the rice paddies of Vietnam, or the desert and mountains of Iraq and Afghanistan. You know, what started out as a day of remembering those who fell on the battlefield throughout America during the Civil War, today was actually originally called Decoration Day because the veterans wanted to decorate the graves of their fallen comrades, their brothers in arms who died on the battlefield, so that they could walk around free, raise their families, and continue on with the legacy of America. It was later changed, 1967, on the congressional mandate. It became Memorial Day. What used to be celebrated on the 30th day of May as Decoration Day, it is now celebrated on the last Monday of May, as we know for today. Cemeteries across the globe where American soldiers are buried, small American flags have been placed at their headstone. Those small flags are the reminder to those who enter those cemeteries that these men, and in some cases women, have not been forgotten. Today across America, national cemeteries are considered sacred ground and protected by the Veterans Administration. The most notable is that of Arlington Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. and the Mall. You know, the Mall is from Lincoln Memorial, right across that green grass, passing over the Washington Monument, over to the Capitol building. Arlington Cemetery, although it is an actual cemetery and is revered as such, it's turned into a tourist trap. You know, visitors from around the world visit the cemetery. They don't visit graves of the heroes. Instead, it's turned into, the stop that starts the tours of Washington, D.C. They visit, they visit the Greek Revival up on the hill, the Greek Revival home up on the hill, the statuesque piece that's surrounded by trees. It's called Arlington House. That's Robert E. Lee's home, the general that actually was in charge of the Confederate Army for the South during the Civil War. They also go down the hill a bit, right in front of Arlington House. If you go down the knoll, you come upon Robert F. Kennedy's gravesite, just a simple cross that Jackie Kennedy put there in memory of Robert, because that's where Robert wanted to be buried. If you're looking at that, off to your right a little bit, you've got John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy's gravesite that also has his son and his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy. The tour bus is filled with students. This is what bothers me the most about Arlington Cemetery, because there is so much history within those grounds, those hallowed grounds. Tour guides don't even have a clue. They just pop in, they visit the tomb of the unknown soldier, and when they head back to the buses, they pass a section to the right as they go back to their buses. That section, all they do is show a brown granite headstone. It's absolutely beautiful, beautifully etched. It's actually the grave of African-American boxer and former Army specialist Joe Louis, who's buried right there. What I have a problem with tourists and tour guides is that these are students. These are 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way up to 11th and 12th grades. They don't bother to step around that one section and go in front of it, where there is about 15 graves that are significantly historical in nature because of the men who are buried there. That section is actually known as the Military Hero section of NASA. Buried there are astronauts who entered space, captured the moon, landed on the moon, went out looking for Jupiter, looking for Mars, looking for Saturn. Unfortunately, they're overlooked, except by family and friends. And I've got a friend of mine's father that lives right there. He's buried right there. So whenever I'm in Arlington Cemetery, that's one of the spots that I go to. Is Colonel Roos's website, because he was the module pilot for the NASA mission that went to the moon. It's very important because that was the first step into space for America, truly, under John F. Kennedy's mandate to explore the universe. Everyone also knows that Robert E. Lee was married to Martha Custis Lee. She was the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington, the wife of General Washington, General George Washington, our first president. Most people don't realize or even understand the history of Arlington Cemetery because General Lee, when he resigned from the Union Army to take up the command of the Confederacy and the Confederate Army in Richmond, his wife was still living in the house. She gathered up as much as she could of her family valuables, snuck them out of the estate, which is what it was, 1,100 acres, and left and abandoned the house. A month after she abandoned it, President Lincoln took control of the property, turned it into the Union headquarters, and used the 1,100 acres to start burying the dead from the Civil War, majority of it in and around Fairfax, any ships that went off, that were plundered and actually sunk in and around the Potomac or in the Chesapeake area. Individuals that were killed in the Battle of Manassas that weren't buried there, they were brought to Arlington Cemetery and buried. There are varying headstones throughout the cemetery marking various wars in which our military have given the ultimate sacrifice. Most people don't know this. They just get on the tour bus and they go to Kennedy's grave and they go to Arlington House and they do the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and that's it. They leave. They don't bother to actually go through the rest of the cemetery. I was very lucky to live just outside of Fort Myer, Army Old Guard, which is the 3rd Infantry for the Army. They're actually the men who take care of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That's the elite of the unit. But Alpha Company through Echo Company of the Old Guard, they are the funeral bearers for Arlington Cemetery for the United States Army. All funerals go through Arlington Cemetery. They go through the main chapel that's located at Fort Myer. The old chapel is usually where all the caisson funerals go through. Beautiful, beautiful chapel. There's actually weddings that go through that place too. But all the funerals go through the real full military honors from the Army, leave Fort Myer. Majority of the other funerals all leave through the administration building that's located in the middle, towards the gate, the front gate of Arlington Cemetery. I used to do my power walks to the cemetery, and I found it very peaceful, very rewarding, because I got to walk through sections of the cemetery where your normal tourist wouldn't go. And I got to see varying, headstones. Some were smooth, some were pointed, Some were black granite, some were brown granite, some were extravagant. I started asking questions. And what I found out was in each section, it's got a letter and a number. The majority of the headstones, as we all know, is all the white military headstones. The other massive granite and brown stones and extravagant ones, those are all for dignitaries that are buried with honors for their contribution to America. But what most visitors don't know is that back during the Civil War, specifically in the Civil War section, which is behind the actual home itself of Robert E. Lee. It's actually split in half. Part of it's in front of it, the other part is behind it. But what people don't realize is the very first grave diggers were former slaves of Robert E. Lee. Those grave diggers were making their sentiment known to the Southern soldiers when they buried them and when they actually created the headstones. They ensured that Union soldiers were buried with smooth top headstones, the one that we see today in most military cemeteries. It's the half-moon top. It's very smooth. In Arlington Cemetery, there are headstones that are actually pointed. Those points are for the Southern soldiers that were buried there. These particular grave diggers, and this is historically known, these particular grave diggers, the former slaves of Robert E. Lee, and some of the slaves that were from the South that hated their plantation owners because they were nasty, they made a point of making it a point so that when the Southern soldiers, the Confederate soldiers, came through and sat on top of the gravestones, being disrespectful, they made sure that they got the point up their butt. And it's a little bit of trivia that most people don't know. Another part of the cemetery, you don't see it. It's buried underneath hundreds of graves that lay in a very special section. This particular section is the left-hand side. If you're looking at the cemetery, actually, better yet, if you're looking at the Iwo Jima monument right there on the knoll, if you look to your left, you'll see the stone wall that surrounds the outside of Arlington Cemetery. That particular corner was actually known as Freedman Village. This was a village where freed slaves from the South made their way up and got as far as Washington, D.C., because Arlington Cemetery actually was part of Washington, D.C. at that time. It wasn't part of Virginia. This particular location became almost like a tent city in the very, very first few months. And then they started cutting down trees on the plantation, on the Lee plantation. And they began to erect buildings. By the time they were done, there were over 1,100 free slaves, fellow Americans who were born and raised here, who actually lived in that village. There was a school. There was a church. Mount Zion Baptist Church was created there. It's now located just on the other side of Arlington Cemetery, right off of Columbia Pike, which is not far from the Pentagon right there. It also, it housed men, women, children who worked very hard to educate themselves, to build a new government in Washington, D.C. They built majority of the buildings in Washington, D.C., in and around that area, right there across the Potomac River. And they also built themselves new lives as free Americans. While the history of Arlington Cemetery is important to the military, so are the ceremonies surrounding the military. A lot of the descendants from the Freedman Village became members of the United States military during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm. And those descendants serve today, right alongside their fellow Americans. And, it's very interesting to go to Arlington Cemetery and to see the ceremonies being done, the wreath-laying ceremonies. Today there was, I know President Obama did a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown. There was a ceremony over at the Vietnam Wall with the reading of the names, as it's done every Memorial Day. There's probably 20, 30 different wreath-laying ceremonies at the tomb in the cemetery on a daily basis. Most people don't realize that. They don't know that. Throughout the entire summer, people can submit a request to do a wreath-laying ceremony. Whether you're a veterans organization or a biker group or whatever, you can submit that request, and it will be approved. You have to go through the old guard, by the way. You have to make sure that you go through the tomb guards because they have a certain schedule that they must keep. I've been to hundreds of these ceremonies at the cemetery. Been to hundreds of ceremonies around the country, especially on Memorial Day. And it's breathtaking. It's somber. It makes you cry. It makes you feel prideful in America. I remember my fondest memories from my childhood were accompanying my father. Now, for those who don't know or don't remember, my father served in the United States Army, retired as a major. Very proud, distinguished, decorated man. He was also a community leader. He was the commander of the VFW in Levittown, New York, Post 9592. That was my home away from home. Every Memorial Day, it would start just before dawn. We would go to various events. Just before dawn, we would venture down to Jones Beach, which is the southern portion of Long Island in Nassau County. We would go to Jones Beach or Long Beach for a sunrise service, surrounded by veterans, VFW, American Legion, community leaders, politicians. This sunrise service was in memory of those who served in the United States Navy, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marines who died at sea. Then we would wind up leaving the beach, and we would venture back inland to either Levittown or Hicksville or East Meadow, which was the surrounding towns from Levittown, for a wreath-laying ceremony. And there would usually be 2 or 3 of them, right in a row. It was a long, long day. There was always one right there in Levittown, right in front of the Levittown Library, where there was a memorial monument to our veterans. There would be that one, and then we would leave, and we would venture on out to our final journey to Pine Lawn Cemetery in Farmingdale, New York, where yet another wreath-laying ceremony would take place before the graves, because Pine Lawn Cemetery is a national cemetery. It's a military cemetery. For all of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in and around the area on the battlefield. Throughout each of these ceremonies, my job, I was a kid, come on. Dad wanted to make sure I wound up not getting in his way when he was talking military stuff or talking politics, whichever the case may be. Usually he kept politics away from the situation. And that's the way he's always kept, the way he always raised me. Politics on Memorial Day, do not mix. You don't do the 2 of them. Any politician, I've seen it as a kid. Any politician shows up at any event and starts, talking their political line. I've literally seen my father walk over and pop him, tell him, leave. You're not wanted. You are disrespecting those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for us to be free. I have the same exact thought process as he does. The 2 don't mix. You don't mix them at all. Now, my job, as I started to say, when I was a kid, was to sell the red poppy pins to help raise money for the VFW's efforts of helping to take care of our veterans and returning war heroes from Vietnam. Because you got to remember, I grew up in the 60s. As a child, we don't understand or we don't think. We just think it's cool that we get to walk around with all these little poppies in this little can, and ask people for a quarter or $1 or whatever the case may be. And make it look good, because to me, My father had a rule with me. If I sold all my poppies, I got all the Coca-Cola and all the Slim Jims back at the VFW later that I wanted. That was pretty cool for me. And I busted my butt and sold them all. But as an adult, I started doing some research, trying to figure out, okay, what is it about these red poppies? Where did this thing come from? You know, I'm a historian. I'm a writer. I needed to find out what the origin was. I was surprised. I was surprised I didn't know, or nobody ever told me when I was a kid. And I was humbled once I learned the meaning. Maybe a lot of you don't know. Maybe they believe, most people believe that the poppy pin should be only sold on Veterans Day. That's a big mistake. Because the poppy pin isn't about Veterans Day. It's about Memorial Day. It was created, for those who don't know, by a Canadian lieutenant colonel by the name of John McCrae. Lieutenant Colonel McCrae served over in France during World War I in what was known as Flanders Field. He wrote a poem by the name of Flanders Field. I want to read this to you now because I never read it before. I think I probably did, but I probably didn't realize or understand the meaning. I think appropriately today it should be read. This is what Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae wrote based on his experience of the battlefield in Flanders Field. It starts off as, "In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. We loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our squirrel with the flow. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us, we die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow." Ladies and gentlemen, what that poem epitomizes is the legacy of what Memorial Day is all about. It's the legacy of the blood shed by our fellow Americans, fellow warriors, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Merchant Marines, who gave their lives, who shed their blood in order for us to be free. If we as Americans do not pick up that torch and go forward, holding it high, just like the Statue of Liberty does, that's what the Statue of Liberty is telling you, ladies and gentlemen. She is raising that torch high so that we will continue the legacy of liberty and freedom. That's what our military does on a daily basis. In your name, as an American. They don't do it because they get great benefits. They get to see the world. They don't do it for the fancy clothes. They don't do it for anything else other than they believe in America. They believe in freedom. Nobody forced them. We don't have the capability to force any individual to lift that hand and take the oath to protect and defend. These individuals, these men and women, these special American sons and daughters chose to lift that hand and take the oath to protect and defend. America, your country, our country, my country. So we as Americans, we within the military community, must ensure that the legacy that they picked up from where others were left on the battlefield, their blood in other soils, mixed in with the stone, the gravel, and with the soil of another country. They didn't shed that blood for no other reason than for freedom. Freedom of ourselves, freedom from tyranny, freedom from evil, for people who wish to have power over other individuals, who wish to cause them harm, do horrendous things to them. They don't do it for the money, ladies and gentlemen. They do it for the love of country, the love of brotherhood and sisterhood, and the love of God. That's what makes America great. That's what makes our military so great. And if we don't start instilling the pride and the history within the children of today of what Memorial Day truly means to us and why we take today to pay tribute and remember those individuals who touched our hearts, part of our families, part of America, who gave their lives for us and to be free. If we don't start doing that soon, we're going to lose the heritage of our military. It's up to each and every American to teach their children and their grandchildren the legacy of what it is to be an American. It is not the responsibility of teachers or civic leaders to teach our children these lessons, these values. It's our responsibility. I mean, I remember years ago, and I've said this many, many times, that I've gotten very upset with my own generation, the baby boomers, because they seem to be split down the middle. Half of them will do what I just said. They'll teach their kids good, wholesome values, what it is to be an American. Then the other half is off on a Richter scale somewhere. I have no clue what planet they're on, but they believe that the subculture of the 60s should be being resurrected today because of the fact that we're at war, on the war on terrorism. What people don't realize, what this half of culture doesn't understand, they're the reason we're in the position that we're in today, because they're the ones that were the drug-induced hippie movement back during the 60s. They were cowards. They were, surprisingly enough, they were offspring of World War II heroes, Korean heroes, who went to war not understanding why they were going, but they went for historical pride, for America, to be a part of America. And when they came home, they realized the end result was more important than they ever thought possible, especially during World War II, when we stumbled upon, through intelligence, Auschwitz, Birkenau, and the horrendous concentration camps during the World War II fighting. That's when they realized what it was all about. My father never spoke about his time in the military, except for he had a couple of one too many, scotch and waters. Only got bits and pieces, but that particular group of warriors never spoke. Unfortunately, the children that came out that were part of the 60s, the late 50s, 60s, there was this change in the culture, change in the mindset of America. I blame that on academia. I blame that on the professors who, in actuality, were cowards. They did not want to serve their country. They were afraid of dying. But yet, they are the first ones who will sit back and complain that their First Amendment rights are being abused. And then we got moronic idiots who want to do a political statement over a holiday weekend in Washington, D.C. at the Jefferson Memorial this past weekend, doing a dancing jig, causing police heartache. Now, a lot of people around America are stirred up with this constitutional rights. Ladies and gentlemen, it comes down to this: individual responsibility. to know when to make your political statement and when not to. Memorial Day weekend is not a weekend, especially in Washington, D.C., when you've got close to 500 to 800,000 tourists on motorcycles in the city. The city is already taxed. First responders, your police, fire, EMS, they're already taxed. They're working way too many hours trying to secure the city from potential terrorist attacks or other problems. And to have moronic idiots claiming to be Americans screaming at the top of their lungs, oh, this is my First Amendment right. Let me tell you something. They were lucky I wasn't there because I'd be smacking them upside the head, telling them, do you not know how to read? Because it says silence. This is a location for reflection. This is a location to think about the history of one of our founding fathers. This is a location to be revered for the sacrifice that this man and his fellow founding fathers created for us to be free, to give us that right of the First Amendment right. You know, when there are signs there around national monuments that say, please be silent, they're asking you in a very nice way to be responsible as an American. It's your responsibility to do that. You can go down to the mall, do all the ruckus and dancing and singing you want to do. They won't say squat to you. But when you go to a national monument that potentially could be a target in some way possible, you have a responsibility as an American to protect that location. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe I'm just the only one in this country that actually has some common sense to not do something along that line, because my father and mother brought me up differently. They taught me to respect monuments based on history. They taught me how to be respectful to the Vietnam Wall, to the World War II Memorial, to the national cemeteries. When it says silence, you be quiet. There have been many times when I have gone through Arlington Cemetery where tour guides are busy on their cell phones, and the children that they're supposed to be in charge of are jumping up and down, screaming bloody murder, or making a hell of a lot of noise, where I've walked up to the tour guide and asked them to please get off their phone and take charge of their tourists, the tourists that they've actually brought into the cemetery. Because then it's pretty bad when an American citizen has to remind the tour guide or the parents thereof that they're in a national cemetery. They're not in some mall hanging out, shopping up a storm looking for their Gucci bags. That's fine and dandy to be talking loud and jumping up and down and making an idiot out of yourself. But it's called respect. This country has lost the respect for America. They have lost respect for our veterans. It's time that we get that back, ladies and gentlemen, especially today of all days. There is no reason why today every American across America didn't take time out at noon to say a special prayer, bend their head, say a special prayer in remembrance of those individuals who gave their lives for freedom in your name on a foreign soil somewhere around the world. There's no reason why you can't do that as a family. You can't stand out in front of your house, salute the flag that you should be flying today. And I'm right outside of a military base today. There's no memorial service going on. There's no flags flying. I'm totally distraught about it. But hey, I understand that Memorial Day signifies the day of loss, of battle buddies. Too close to a military base, it's too much of a hit-home reminder. But honestly, as my father would always say, if we don't begin to take care of our own that are in uniform within the military community and the veterans community, by remembering those who went before us, we're dishonoring them, and we're dishonoring the uniform that you're wearing today. You have to wind up doing this, ladies and gentlemen, whether you want to do it or not. It's a legacy that you have been given. That's a very special gift. It's not something to be thrown away like a dirty tissue that you just blew your nose from. That's not what it's about. The legacy that we as Americans carry within our veins should be sacred, and so should be the remembrance of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Because if we're not the ones that are going to, start remembering them the right way and paying homage to them for their sacrifice, we dishonor them. We dishonor their families who are left behind grieving. Majority of the families, they're known as Gold Star families. They are the most special people I have ever had the honor and privilege and dedication to be around. I know a lot of Gold Star families. The only thing that I missed this weekend about not being in Washington, D.C. is seeing my Gold Star mamas that I usually hang out with Rolling Thunder, because those Gold Star mamas they're the mamas of our Vietnam vets who gave the ultimate sacrifice. And there's one particular one. She's about 94 years old, 93, 94 years old now. She's a hoot and a half. She really is. All of them are. Each and every one of them. And they love it. I don't just say, hey, Mom. I had to distinguish them because I had the Gold Star mamas from Vietnam. I got the Gold Star moms of today, the Gold Star wives. So a number of years ago, I started teasing them, saying, nope, you're my Gold Star mamas. Because you're the ones that are out there flirting with the guys and trying to pick up those honeys on the bikes, and those leather. And I'd always tease them, and I'd always make them laugh instead of making them cry. And then I got the Gold Star moms of today, who are still trying to wrap themselves around not having their warrior. And the Gold Star wives, who I love dearly because they're the ones that they get thrown to the side a lot. They lost their husband, and there's also the Gold Star wives and Gold Star husbands. They lost the spouse, the love of their life. They have to carry on with the children, just like the Gold Star moms carry on with life without their son or daughter. I've learned so much from them over the last 30 years in dealing with them and working with them and hanging out with them and hearing their crazy stories and loving every minute of it, I have to tell you. And, it's because of them that I, even before I even started going through the process of the Broken Hearts Tour project, which is all about the fallen, I went to them first. Last Memorial Day weekend, I hung out with them in the heat, under the tents at the Lincoln Memorial, and I asked them, I told them what my concept was of doing this documentary, and I flat out told them straight up, if you feel that I'm going to dishonor the name of your son or daughter or husband or wife, I won't do this, because that's the last thing I ever want to do. But I want to tell the stories of your children, of your family members, your fallen warrior. And I remember my Gold Star mama. Oh, God, I love her. She loved it. She was like, well, my son never came home. He was one of the missing in actions. She only got a flag. That's all she ever got, was a flag. She said she'll never be alive to get the remains of her son to come home from Vietnam. And my heart breaks every time I think about that, because there's so many out there that the MIAs that are still, I think there's like 2,000 or 3,000 that are still left from Vietnam. The number might be lower by now. I haven't checked in a while. But these are the individual mamas who, and families and siblings, who will never have rest because their loved one is still on that battlefield. We left them behind. That's what Rolling Thunder was all about. Rolling Thunder is all about remembering the names, those 50,000 names that are on that black granite wall, and to raise awareness of the POW, MIA issue from Vietnam, from Korea, and even from today. we've had a few warriors from today that were held captive and unfortunately didn't make it home alive. Those are fallen soldiers. Those are individuals that we can't forget. We just can't. Because if we do, we dishonor them. We dishonor America. But my Gold Star mama, I got to tell you, it's such a hoot and a half because she reaches out to me. She's so tiny, so frail. I'm always afraid that when I give her a hug, I'm going to break her. But she's so adorable. She reaches out to me and grabs my hand, and I'm thinking, I'm leaning forward. I'm thinking that she's going to tell me something so important that I can't miss. You know what she tells me? You better hurry up on this project because I'm getting old. I might not make it that long. Remember, I'm 93 years old. I ain't got that much time left to go. The first time that she said that to me last year, I looked at her. I was puzzled. I didn't know what to say. I was totally without words. And then she started laughing at me because she saw the look on my face like, do I say, oh, stop being stupid, you're going to be around here for another 100 years because she's 94 years old. And she just looked at me and she said, no, anything I've got, you've got. She said, I would love to have my son involved in any project that you do because I know you'll do something with dignity and honor and grace. Anything I've got. You've got my info. You've got my daughter's info. You tell us when you're ready. That's the only thing I missed about being, about not being in D.C. this weekend for Rolling Thunder. Although it's only the fourth time I've missed it, and it kind of killed me yesterday, knowing I wasn't going to be on the back of that bike with friends and military family, because the day is just so special. It's always a hurry up and wait with the military, and it's a hurry up and wait with Rolling Thunder. You get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you don't roll out till noon. Meanwhile, you're sitting on the tarmac of the Pentagon, sweltering. You want to take a nap, you want to go to sleep, and many times we do. But unfortunately, I wasn't there this weekend. So I missed out on the golden opportunity to see my Gold Star mamas, my Gold Star families. And any of you that are listening, I was with you yesterday in spirit. Still love you. Would have loved to have seen you, but I'll see you soon, especially on this tour. God, it's 10 minutes too already. God, I didn't think I'd have enough material actually to wind up telling you about tonight. Because actually, I was a little busy all day. It was Memorial Day. I basically did my own little thing having to do with Memorial Day. It's my own special. When I'm not in D.C. for Rolling Thunder, or I'm not at a location paying homage, I go into my own little world, because there are individuals that are out there, family members that I have never met. I've actually met one family member. But there are individuals that I personally have touched, have been friends with, direct friends, children of my friends who have given the ultimate sacrifice. In Section 67 in Arlington Cemetery, it's known as the OEF, Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Afghanistan section. It's the War on Terrorism section. In less than 6 months, I went to 68 funerals during the span of 6 months. It was right in the middle of the hard push in Iraq and also in Afghanistan. Honestly, personally, I can't do funerals anymore. It's just too much for me. I can go to the cemetery after the fact, but I just cannot do the actual funeral anymore. It just brings back too many memories for me. And I feel it's a disrespect, but at the same time, the individuals who gave the ultimate sacrifice understand. I can't do the crowd. I can't do the mourning, because all I want to do is tell the story of that person. Because one of the things that I learned when I went to Iraq with the United States Marine Corps 3rd LAR guys, back in 2006, I asked them, what do I say? What do I do? What do I write? God forbid if you give the ultimate sacrifice. They were all in unison. Same thing. I got the same answer. Celebrate my life, celebrate my mission, celebrate my being a United States Marine. I know why I'm here. Celebrate my mission. My job's not done. I take that to heart of what they said, because it's pretty much the same thing across the board in the military. They don't want you to cry for them. They don't want you to mourn them. They want you to celebrate their life. Therefore, I celebrate their life. I don't mourn them on their funeral. However, I do go to the cemetery after the crowds have gone in order to make sure that they're not forgotten. That's when I touch the stone, to make sure that I feel that cold granite and to let that person know who was close to me. You're never going to be forgotten, ever. Absolutely never. As long as I live, you will be forever in my heart. Some of the names are actually painful to remember. Although I remember the smiles, I remember the laughter. I can remember certain comments that were made. You know, a Marine singing in my ear, Ave Maria, with the most beautiful angelic voice you've ever heard in your entire life. You know, talking about NASCAR, talking about dates, talking about the wife back home, the future, what the possibilities are after the war is over. Those are the things that I think of. Those are the things that make me want to cringe, because I came home and they didn't. And if I could change the situation, I would be the one in the ground. If I had my one wish, and every one of them would be alive. But unfortunately, God didn't grant me my wish. So in their name, I carry on. It's the only thing I can do. And so should you. Because the only way we can continue that legacy is if we continue to tell the stories of those battle buddies that never made it home. Those sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, neighbors, classmates. Those are the individuals, ladies and gentlemen, that we should be celebrating today. We should not be just celebrating a sale at the local Target or Walmart. We shouldn't be worrying about, can we save 20 or 50% today? We should be celebrating the lives of our fellow Americans who gave the blood for us to be free. Bottom line. That's what tonight's message is all about, ladies and gentlemen. Carry on that legacy. Make sure you never allow any sailor, soldier, airman, Marine, Coast Guardman, or Merchant Marine who gave the ultimate sacrifice for freedom under the flag of the United States of America, that they are never forgotten. If you're driving down the road and you happen to see a cemetery, a military cemetery, even if you don't know anybody in there, take a ride in, walk around, look at the headstones. You might not know the names, you might not know who they were, but somewhere, someone can tell you who that person is. Pick a name. The Internet's a wonderful thing. Pick a name, do a Google search or a Bing search. Try and find out who that person is. Connect with them. Find out what made them tick. You'll be surprised. They probably liked the same television shows you do, the same music, the same sporting events. They might like the same ice cream you like, or the same cola, same candy bar. They might like snowboarding, skiing, football, hockey, soccer. They're just like you and me, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the Broken Hearts Tour Project, an American Warrior documentary, is so important to me. Because through this project, we'll be able to tell those kinds of stories and bring to life those headstones of individuals who shed the blood and gave their lives, the ultimate sacrifice for their brothers and sisters that are on the battlefield, and you, their fellow American. They're the ones that gave their lives for freedom. They have more courage and more bravery within their little toe than the majority of us as Americans who have never put the uniform on have in our entire body. These are the veterans. These are the warriors who make up the United States military. They deserve to be respected and remembered. That's all I've got to say tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It is just about end of showtime here. For all those out there who are wearing the uniform currently of the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, don't forget the Merchant Marines. Each and every day you put that uniform on, you make this humble American very proud to be an American. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to do this show. I would not be able to do my writing. Because it's because of you upholding the Constitution of the United States that I actually have the capability to do what I'm doing and bring my message to you every Monday night here on All Fired Up Military Monday. So I want to leave you with Daniel Smith's song that I absolutely love. It's called Thank You. That's exactly how I feel tonight. For each and every one of you with that uniform on, you make me more proud to be an American every day. To my family members out there, Aunt Betty loves you. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. It's All Fired Up Military.
Off to war, and that's when we get behind them and give them all our support. But we sometimes take for granted that they've always been around. Each one of them a hero for defending this sacred ground. They keep us safe and they keep us free. They make this country proud. From one American to another, it's time they heard these words out loud. Thank you for the job you do so well. You risk it all in freedom's name and sometimes go through hell. Thank you for the sacrifices made for the ones who never came back home. A high price has been paid. It's about time we extend some gratitude. Let me be the first in line to say thank you. I want to offer my thanks to those men inside that VFW tonight, 'cause they were willing to do whatever it took, including laying down their lives on land, on sea, and in the air. A tough job day in